Acadiana, Meteorologist Dave Baker here on a Monday, July the 21st. Fortunately, as we got toward the latter part of the weekend, some of that tropical moisture getting out of the way, getting a little bit more sunshine, but on the bad side of that, we've got a lot more sunshine, which means our temperatures have been climbing. And National Weather Service over in Lake Charles, within the last hour, went ahead and pulled the trigger on that heat advisory, as we are going to be seeing some heat index values later today climbing over 108. That is the threshold when a heat advisory kicks in for the Lake Charles National Weather Service region, which includes most of Acadiana. Right now, it's 89. We have partly cloudy skies here in Lafayette. That heat index already at 100. Dew point at 76. Humidity 65%. Winds are calm, and the pressure's at 30.09. And it is a pretty nice day out there. At least it looks pretty. Doesn't feel so great because of the heat and the humidity, but as far as any traveling goes, I think you're going to be pretty good anywhere you go across Acadiana. There's very, very little rain that's out there right now. And in fact, we'll take a look at the big radar here first and show you've got some showers kind of circling a big ridge of high pressure that's currently across much of the southeast. So you got that big ridge right there. So everything kind of goes that way and then kind of like that way. So we do have that ridge that's in place, and that's going to kind of suppress some of the showers, some thunderstorms for us locally today, but it will also be responsible for dragging some tropical moisture back in our direction later in the week. So do expect those rain chances to climb just a bit into Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. If you've got some plans to be out on the waters, our local lakes and bays and even the offshore waters looking pretty good today. Winds are currently out of the southwest at about 10 to 15 knots, and seas running about 2 to 3 feet. Check it out. Beautiful day over in Panama City Beach. Look how gorgeous that water is today in those white sandy beaches. I know some folks enjoying some time there. Orange Beach, not looking so bad either. A pretty day there. And as we work our way westward over toward Dauphin Island, gorgeous day there with nice breeze. It is hot and humid, though, all along the northern Gulf Coast. And there's a look from Lumcon. That's over in Cocodrie. And this is the west view, so we're looking kind of in our direction from Cocodrie. And then finally, we'll finish off with Bayou Vista Bridge there over near Galveston, and another gorgeous day here along the northern Gulf Coast. And you can see that pretty nice day here in Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Texas, or rather Texas and Georgia and Florida. We do have a little disturbed weather, a little low pressure area kind of off the back of a front that's still kind of over here off the Atlantic coast. Then we've got another piece of energy that's going to come in from the middle part of this nation, and then that's going to kind of drift over into the Atlantic. And some of that moisture, along with an upper level trough, or what we would call a TUT low, which is a tropical upper tropospheric trough, but TUT for short. It's mainly a low pressure area that's got a lot of tropical moisture that will be drifting off toward the west and moving in tandem with more of a surface feature. There's that upper low right there. And with a front coming off, we might have some moisture coming in. But we've also got another tropical disturbance that's a little farther in the Atlantic that we'll talk about here in just a couple of minutes. But I want to focus on the Gulf satellite. Gorgeous day. Doesn't get much better than that, especially when we're starting to get into the middle part of hurricane season. And then Central America looks pretty good. Bit of a tropical wave kind of working its way across Nicaragua and Costa Rica. That's going to push off toward the west. And it's also interacting with that upper trough, or that TUT low, that might kind of affect us a little bit later on. You can see that counterclockwise spin northeast of the Bahamas. And again, that's high in the atmosphere. So that's not going to become anything tropical, but it can add to help bring some of that moisture in a little bit later on this week that will increase our chances for rain. And then out in the tropical Atlantic, we've got disturbance 94L right over there. And it's not showing any signs of circulation or any organization right now. And it is still several hundred miles east of the Windward Islands. I think it's about 650 to 700 miles or so away. So it's got a couple of days that it's going to go ahead and drift off toward the west. The National Hurricane Center giving it a low end chance at about 20% that we'll see some formation there sometime between now and when it reaches parts of the Windward Islands. Now, Beyond that, as we get into the Caribbean, things are going to be a little more hostile, and development, if any, would be rather slow. So, if it's going to get up to a tropical depression or a tropical storm, it's going to have to do it here probably in the next 48 hours. So, real quick look at the satellite imagery of 94L. Again, it is no threat to the Acadiana area. Not today, not this coming weekend, and probably not next week either. It's pretty far out there. So I'm not too concerned about it, but just something that we watch out for when hurricane season gets going. Usually toward the end of July, early part of August, you start to see the Atlantic waking up a little bit more, and some of those tropical waves that come off the African coast can hold together a little bit better. There's a little less wind shear, a little less Saharan dust as we go through time. So we'll see that increasing over the Atlantic basin, but you can see our hurricane model tracks, the spaghetti plots, if you wish, do take it off toward the west through the middle part of the Leeward and Windward Islands. And then there's several less models that are tracking it farther into the Western Caribbean. It kind of gives up on it after about 72 hours. So that's what we're talking about. It's going to have to really get its act together here in this part of the world, because by the time it gets into this part of the world, it's not going to have a good chance because of the wind shear. And I'll show you those maps a little bit later when we talk about the entire Atlantic basin at the same time. But I will say that the intensity model guidance is kind of gotten up a little bit higher. Earlier this morning when I was looking at that, there was really only one model that was pulling it up into tropical storm range, but now we've got a few more models that are trying to get it up to a tropical depression or a tropical storm here within the next 48 to 72 hours. So who knows? We might have a name system out there before it reaches the Windward Islands, but then you see as you get past 84 hours and going out even farther, the lines go down below that tropical storm threshold. So that's an indication of more of a hostile environment for it to work with as it moves into the Caribbean. So at this point, the water temperatures are plenty warm for anything that would develop out here and move into portions of the Caribbean. You can see those water temperatures are above 26.5, which is the yellow shade on here. So anything yellow or brighter, the water temperatures are at or above 80 degrees at the surface. And there's a little more heat potential as you get over into the Caribbean, but where this particular wave is right now is kind of way out here. So the heat content of that is relatively low right now. So we're not expecting that to be much of a factor when it comes to any kind of development. But the shear is going to be an issue right now. It's in a low wind shear environment out here. But you can see over here in the Caribbean, the wind shear is quite high. So as it starts to march its way off in this direction, it's going to have a lot harder of a time for development, because when you got those winds in different directions at different altitudes, any tropical system that's trying to spin up there at the surface and you get those thunderstorms to build and kind of turn a little bit, if you've got these winds blowing those storms apart or kind of getting in and breaking up the core of the system, you don't get much development. In fact, it tends to tear developing tropical systems apart. So wind shear is a good thing to have there over the central part of the Caribbean. And I also want you to take notice there across the southeast, including the eastern Gulf, there's quite a bit of wind shear too, because we are going to talk about the possibilities of tropical moisture and maybe some tropical weather trying to work its way into portions of the Gulf of Mexico. But right now we're in good shape. We've got a lot of Saharan dust over the western Gulf. We've got Saharan dust all across the Caribbean, and really it's pretty thick as you get closer and closer to the African coast. So we'll look at the models taking out 10 days, and I am going to show you a couple of things. One, I want you to notice what's going on out here, and also I kind of want you to focus on what's going on over here. So those are the two areas that we're watching. As far as 94L, the system that's way out here, again, that's going to kind of drift its way into the Caribbean, and according to the GFS, it really doesn't do a whole lot. And then if we focus our attention back over here as we get into the latter part of this week, you see that moisture kind of gathering, then kind of working its way off toward the west, and it's bringing some additional rainfall for us here in the Acadiana region. And as we kind of stop this map on Friday morning, right now it just looks like some lower pressure and maybe some rain. In fact, it looks like kind of the low according to some of our higher resolution models, look like they're actually going to stay. The low itself, I should say, is probably going to stay over land. But I do have a few models that kind of drift something out in this direction, so it might have a chance if it gets out over the waters. But even the Euro shows that front coming in and the moisture gathering over Florida and then kind of drifting its way off to the west later in the week as an unorganized trough. And then if you focus your attention down here, again, down toward the south, we don't really have any development according to the Euro either, anything that wants to come out of the Caribbean. So as you see that wave kind of moving off toward the west, it moves into the Caribbean and really doesn't become a whole lot here as we go into next week. So we'll move on to the Euro model. And again, the solution locally here for Friday morning is showing some additional rainfall again, but you're really, again, in this particular area, you're not seeing any kind of low pressure trying to develop. So at this point, the GFS nor the Euro are calling for any tropical development over the Gulf. So again, we'll go into the Canadian. We'll take you out 10 days. We'll start in this particular area. And as you can see, really nothing happens there over the next several days. So I'll let the model kind of reset and we'll focus more on that area again. And you see the moisture kind of drifting off toward the west, more rain for parts of South Louisiana as we get into the latter part of the week. But again, as we stop this a little bit later this week, it's pretty inconclusive. Doesn't look like we've got any kind of a low pressure area trying to form. So we've got 3 of the 4 models right there calling for just kind of a trough moving to the west, maybe enhanced a little bit by an upper low or that tut low that I talked about. So the chances for rain are going to be going up, but with the extra moisture in place, remember some of those thunderstorms that we get into the weekend could be efficient rainfall producers. Not calling for a washout of the weekend, not calling for a flood event either, but you know how it goes here in South Louisiana. You get under one of those downpours, you get 2, 3, 4 inches of rain really quick, and then just a few miles down the road, they don't get anything. So we'll finish here with the Icon model, which is always a little more aggressive when it comes to developing tropical systems. And you can see that there as we go into Friday and Saturday. You actually see a bit of a low. And then out here with 94L, it really doesn't do a whole lot with that. It just kind of brings that moisture off toward the west, gives some rain to the Windward Islands, and then that mostly pushing into portions of the Caribbean. But beyond 7 days, it's really not showing anything exciting. But the Icon model is still showing maybe a tropical depression. Again, if the low develops and moves west over the waters of the Gulf, it would have a better chance. But at least at right now, the other 3 models are calling for more of a trough kind of moving westward over land. So it would be more of a rain event than it would be a tropical event. So right now, at least for what we're looking at, not 94L that's out in the Atlantic, but anything that could potentially develop close to the southeastern coast, whether the Atlantic Ocean or in the Gulf, at this point, the GFS, the Euro, and the Canadian, none of those are showing any kind of tropical development, but the Icon still has a tropical depression coming in. So I would say, at least for this upcoming weekend, get ready for better coverage of showers and thunderstorms. Again, it's not going to be a washout, but with that tropical moisture kind of surging in here, and I'm using the Euro model here, and I'm just kind of sliding between Wednesday, Thursday, and then going into Friday, you see the moisture does increase there over South Louisiana, but it's a little bit more profound there over parts of the Gulf. So again, I think kind of like what happened with 93L, if a lot of the moisture stays offshore, that's where the heavier amounts of rain are going to be, or down toward the coast or southeastern Louisiana. And then the farther inland you live, probably less coverage of rain. But remember, with that high precipitable water that's going to be in place, those thunderstorms can produce some pretty good rains in a short period of time. And as far as the Euro tropical formation forecast, I will say at least along the Gulf Coast, it's kind of backed off a little bit since the weekend right over there. We're now down into the about the 10 to 20% range, but it was pushing 40 to 50 on Saturday. So it's really backed off, but I will show you with it for the next week or so. Check out how the Atlantic there between Africa and the Windward Islands showing maybe some of those tropical waves staying a little better organized there as they move west across the Atlantic Ocean. So, again, over the next couple of weeks, especially as we start to get into August, it's going to be a lot more likely that we're going to see tropical waves holding together and probably becoming tropical depressions or tropical storms. Again, we're going to see that trend going up as we go into August. So, again, not much to worry about out there right now. A few tropical waves. We'll keep an eye on 94L, which is out in the Atlantic. That's not going to be an issue for us. And then we'll watch for any tropical moisture that might get enhanced there along the Gulf Coast a little bit later this week. But at this point, I think we're just going to see increased rain chances as we go into Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Well, I hope you enjoyed Let's Talk Tropics. If you do like this video, subscribe to my channel and please put on those notifications too and tell some friends about Let's Talk Tropics and Acadiana Weather Today. Remember, you can hear my forecast on Big 102.1, Planet Radio 106.7, and Freedom 95.1. And then follow my social media pages too, both on Facebook and X. And thank you to everyone who subscribed to Acadiana Weather Today, including new subscribers here in the past week. I'm Meteorologist Dave Baker. Enjoy the rest of your Monday, and I'll see you on Tuesday morning. Have a great day.